Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. There's a really interesting article on Israel 365 News titled, "Did the Ayatollah try to blow up the Temple Mount before he died?" Written by my friend Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. By the way, in case you missed it, Jasmine Rapley and myself interviewed him where there was an article written about the church on Israel 365, and this was like a follow-up commentary on that article, and we had a really good conversation. So make sure to check this out. I'll put the link for it in the description box below. But did the Ayatollah try to blow up the Temple Mount before he died? And honestly, I've been wondering this since April of 2024. You'll recall that was the first time that Iran directly attacked Israel, like not through its proxies, but sending its own drones and ballistic missiles at Israel. And it produced scenes like this, where somebody was at the Temple Mount and recorded this with their phone. This looks like something straight out of the book of Revelation. It looks apocalyptic. And I was wondering back then, are they really willing to risk sending these ballistic missiles at Jerusalem and risk hitting these religious sites, right? Because if they hadn't been intercepted, I suppose that would have been a possibility. And this has continued until today. I've been trying to keep on top of the news. I'm sure, just like most of you, I check news articles, and I'm always on X, scrolling through all the most recent posts. And then I also check this website, and I also have it on my phone because there's an app for this. This is So Far Red Alert. And it turns out that Jerusalem has been targeted quite a bit in this current war. I didn't know that the website had this portion of it where it has all these statistics. You can see Jerusalem right here. It seems like it's on the low end, but the count so far is 78 attacks. Here's the overall line graph for the number of alerts since the war started. And as you can see, it's starting to come down and taper off. And then down here, I think this is really neat. They have this map that shows you which areas have been struck more than other areas, relatively speaking. So if it's this bright red color right here, you can see the key up here. Tel Aviv seems like it's been attacked the most compared to other locations within the country. But Jerusalem is this reddish orange color. So it's just like one step down, but there has been a fair amount of missiles fired at Jerusalem. And I have the same feelings as this person. This is We Have It All. They posted, "Imagine the response of the entire world if Iran would have succeeded. Iranian missile nearly hits Temple Mount and the world barely notices." Yeah, what would have happened back in 2024? And then the second attack, which I think was in or around June. No, this was the 12-day war. I'm sorry. So there were two attacks, and then there was the 12-day war, and then there's the war that we're currently in. And I think every single time Jerusalem has been in the crosshairs, what would have happened if they had successfully struck Jerusalem, but especially these sensitive areas right here, like the Temple Mount? What would happen? Would everybody just, what would people do? How would the different countries react? I tend to think that everybody would lose their minds. And another thing that's going on right now, I don't know if we're going to see more of this because it seems like Iran is losing its ability to launch missiles. But some of the big news over the last couple days is Iran has started to use these missiles that have cluster munitions. Recently, I made a video talking about Joseph Smith and how He made the observation during the Great Meteor Shower of 1833, as the Saints were being expelled from Jackson County. There was this really large meteor shower event, and he said that it was no doubt a sign of the times, and it was an indication that the second coming was soon. But he said that this doesn't compare, or that didn't compare to what would happen toward the end, because the meteorites or the meteor shower, they didn't actually reach the ground. They didn't hit the ground. And he indicated that that was one of the conditions of the complete fulfillment of those prophecies, of stars casting themselves from their places and hitting the ground. Well, these stars, quote unquote, are definitely hitting the ground, or at least some of them are. But especially in the case, I think, of these cluster munitions, because you can't intercept all those. So I don't know if we're going to see more of this, but imagine that this is fired over Jerusalem and a bunch of these make it to the Temple Mount. All right, so let's get into this article. I have a couple parts that I've highlighted. Sunday was a tragic day in Israel as an Iranian missile killed 9 people, some of whom were in a bomb shelter, left several missing, and wounded dozens, including several children in Beit Shemesh, bringing the number of Israelis killed by Iranian missiles to 10, along with nearly 500 wounded. But a tragedy of a different kind was narrowly averted on Saturday, the first day of the war, as one missile landed just several hundred meters from the Western Wall and the Temple Mount. The missile hit the Sultan's Pool outdoor events venue. Okay, I've never heard of that location before. I had to look it up. It talks about it here in the Times of Israel, this article. Iranian missile warhead falls less than a kilometer from Temple Mount, al-Aqsa Mosque. And here's, I guess, some security footage of it. Police and sappers conducted searches of the area and found the warhead from the Iranian ballistic missile, along with, quote unquote, incendiary and explosive materials scattered nearby, the police said. That's another thing. Even if there's not a direct hit on whatever, al-Aqsa Mosque or the Dome of the Rock, could these missiles and these munitions cause a fire? You know, a fire that quickly spreads and destroys those structures? I don't know. But look at this. Quote, this is from Police Commander Devir Tamir in a statement on the incident. Quote, yesterday we received further proof that from the enemy's perspective, all targets are legitimate, and if that warhead had deviated by a few hundred meters, it is very possible that a very serious hit would have occurred, especially if one of the holy places had been hit while it was full of worshipers and visitors. I had to look up where this location was. It seems that it's called Mitchell Parks and Gardens, and maybe it has like an alternate name, Sultan's Pool, right here. We're going to look at my Google Earth map. I've added a couple of place marks so we can see it. So over here is the Temple Mount, and here's the Western Wall with this red place marker. And Sultan's Pool is just right over here, or Mitchell Park. You can see up here it has the Sultan's Pool is an ancient water basin to the west side of Mount Zion, Jerusalem. Let's change the view just a little bit. So there's the Mount of Olives right there. And yeah, relatively speaking, that is not too far. In fact, I guess we could measure it. Let's get the measuring tool. We'll go from Mitchell Park to the Western Wall. That's 928 meters. Let's see what that is in feet. 3,045 feet. What is that in miles? So it's just a little over half a mile away. And then kilometers, well, of course, 0.93 kilometers. So yeah, that is pretty close. Again, what would have happened if the western wall, the Kotel, or al-Aqsa Mosque right here, or the Dome of the Rock, or even, some of the other things over here. Even if it wasn't one of these Temple Mount sites, what if it was a Christian site? What if it was the Garden of Gethsemane? What if it was the Orson Hyde Memorial Gardens? What if it was the BYU Jerusalem Center? Can you imagine the news that we would be covering right now if any of these missiles had reached those targets? Like, that would be huge. Okay, going back. On Sunday, another missile landed on a highway on the outskirts of Jerusalem Sunday evening. 3 people were wounded. The impact left a large crater in the road, hollowed out a traffic sign, and caused heavy damage to several cars. But it is also clear that the Islamist regime is targeting Jerusalem. Yeah, they definitely are. I don't know if it's like a top priority, but we saw on the map that it's up there, not as much as Tel Aviv. Continuing, ironically, a missile strike on the Temple Mount would likely destroy the Muslim structures that dominate Judaism's holiest site. Within Saturday's Jerusalem-bound rocket is a hidden meaning. And then he goes into some stuff. He points out right here, while Sunni Muslims claim the Jewish site has spiritual significance for them, and then in parentheses, a claim denied by other Sunni Muslims, Iran and the Shiite religion do not attribute any significance to Jerusalem. Iran has nonetheless supported Hamas and Hezbollah in putting al-Aqsa at the top of their agenda. I wanted to fact check that. Again, I'm friends with Adam, but sometimes when we're having political conversations, all of us can kind of, maybe get too exaggerated or a little bit extreme or not see things clearly. I decided to ask Grok, do Shiite Muslims view Jerusalem as significant? And Grok said, yes. Shiite Muslims generally view Jerusalem, or Al-Quds, as religiously significant, though its importance is typically ranked lower than for many Sunni Muslims, and below core Shia holy sites like those in Mecca, Medina, Najaf, Karbala, and Kufa. Yeah, because I think we're all used to hearing that in Islam, in general, that Jerusalem is the third holiest site. It doesn't seem that that's the case with Shiite Muslims, but let's read some more. It says, Jerusalem is not listed among the top holiest Shia sites, which prioritize Imam shrines in Najaf, Karbala, Mashhad, and Qom. Critics, often non-Shia or political perspectives, as is the case with the article that we're reading, sometimes cite these to argue Jerusalem has, quote-unquote, no religious significance in Shia Islam, and that modern emphasis is purely political. However, mainstream Shia authorities and texts reject this as an overstatement. Jerusalem retains recognized holiness, and many Shia pray there when possible or support its defense on religious grounds alongside political ones. So that may be a little bit of a mischaracterization. It seems like, if it was us, if we're thinking about Missouri, of course I'm in a Missouri frame of mind, our holiest sites, or the most significant sites, I would say, are the Temple Lot here in Independence, Adamant Yamin, Far West, Liberty Jail. And then you have other ones, you have other significant sites, but they're maybe not viewed as holy. Like for instance, we have these different sites where there's supposed to be temples in the future. those are highly important to us because there's a future for some of these sites. Other ones are more historic, and it depends on what happened there. There's a lot of priority given to Liberty Jail compared to, say, the site where Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith were allowed to escape to Nauvoo. So maybe that helps us understand a little bit more how they view it. I'd be pretty upset if that site was in danger, the site where Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith were allowed to escape. I wouldn't want anybody messing with that. In Breckenridge, Missouri, in the city park, they have a monument along with the millstone from Haun's Mill, and I wouldn't want anybody desecrating that. I'd be pretty upset. So I think we could probably look at it that way. Later on, though, this is pretty interesting, and I think that this is a sign for the Jews. So now we're going to get into how the Lord may be preparing them for the second coming, according to their beliefs and their understanding and their language. Okay, so at this part, he's talking about Purim, which is a Jewish holiday. Let's go to hebcal.com. Purim was on Tuesday, March 3rd, and this is the celebration of the Jews being preserved when after the Babylonian occupation, after the captivity. We know that it went to the Persians, and there was a moment where the Jews could have been killed because of one particular man named Haman. And so you have the story of Esther. The Jews were preserved, and they celebrate it as Purim. So it's interesting because Persia, that's modern day Iran, and I believe they refer to themselves as Persians. It's like Persian culture and language. So we have that important story, and this year it's being celebrated so close to when this war started, which was just 3 days earlier. So Purim was on the 3rd. The war started on the 28th of February. So that was 3 days before. So that already is interesting. And then beyond that, I know I've been kind of like dropping the ball when it comes to signs in the heavens, but we recently had a lunar eclipse or a blood moon. And guess what? It happened on Purim. So I've added it to my spreadsheets. This is my second coming timeline spreadsheet. I have the beginning of the Iran war. I don't know if it's going to have some other name in the future. So right now I'm just calling it the Iran war. And then we had the lunar eclipse on Purim 3 days later. I've also added the thing about the eclipse, to my spreadsheet called Signs Moon. The last one that I had on here was September 8th of 2025. Total lunar eclipse on September 7th through 8th. This is the day before President Nelson's 101st birthday. More than 6 billion people, or 77% of the world's population, were able to see it, or at least in an area that they should have been able to see it if the weather was good. So that's the last one that I have, and now we have this very interesting one. A blood moon on Purim, which commemorates the Jews being preserved, potentially having been annihilated by the Persians. And now, in 2026, we have this major war between Iran and Israel around Purim. It's just interesting. Okay, at this part of the article it says, and just as the fall of Haman, that was the big bad guy of the Purim story, and just as the fall of Haman ushered in a new Persian king, heralding the second temple in Jerusalem. Remember, it was the Persians under Cyrus that allowed them to go back and build the temple, because the Babylonians had destroyed Solomon's temple. Ushered in a new Persian king, heralding the second temple in Jerusalem, the fall of the Islamist regime may set the stage for the third temple. Reza Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince of Iran, who is being lauded by the Iranian people as their choice to replace the Ayatollah as the head of their country, visited the Western Wall, part of the ancient temple complex in Jerusalem, in April 2023 to promote peace between the Iranian and Israeli people. His visit highlighted the historical connection to Cyrus the Great, who helped rebuild the Jewish temple 2,500 years ago. The visit fostered hope for a new era of diplomatic relations, sometimes referred to as the quote-unquote Cyrus Accords. In recent interviews, Pahlavi has frequently referenced this biblical connection in the Persian role in building the Jewish temple as the basis for renewed relations with Israel. Okay, I would like to know if he's serious about that, or if he's just saying it in the interest of having good relations with Israel. If he did become the head of state of Iran, and he had that kind of power, is that something that he would actually lobby for? Is the construction of the third temple? That would be wild. I guess we'll have to see. Continuing. So just as Haman the Agagite, oh my gosh, Agagite? I'm going to go with Agagite. So just as Haman the Agagite tried to prevent the rebuilding of the temple, Ayatollah Khamenei, the spiritual heir of that mission, was trying to destroy the Temple Mount in his final throes. Okay, well that is... I'm sorry, I'm going to have to say that that's speculation. I don't know if you can say for sure that he was trying to destroy the Temple Mount. It may be that they had a high degree of confidence that they would miss the holy sites. Like, I'm no military expert. I don't know how precise their weaponry is. But maybe they had reason to believe that, like, very good reason to believe that they wouldn't hit the Temple Mount. And if they were serious about doing it, then maybe this Jerusalem area would be in bright red and Tel Aviv would be in like the orangish color. So I don't know if you can go that far and say that's absolutely what he was trying to do. I think my assessment is that, like, it's like, well, if it happens, it happens. I think that was probably the attitude. It could be because, like, we've seen Iran attacking these other Muslim nations as punishment for hosting U.S. troops, or, you know, helping Israel, helping the United States, whatever. And maybe it's a revenge thing. It may not be a primary target for them, but maybe it's like, hey, you know what? If we hit that, then great, because you guys love the Temple Mount so much. You love al-Aqsa, then along with all these other targets that we're hitting across the Middle East, why not this one too? So maybe. Okay, continuing. Rabbi Mordecai ben Avraham, who lives in the Old City of Jerusalem, wrote about this spiritual aspect of the ongoing war and how it is focusing on the rebuilding of the temple. Quote, "The architects of chaos in Tehran attempted to commit an act of sacrilege so profound it would have torn the fabric of human history. They launched a ballistic warhead aimed at the heart of Jerusalem. And let us be clear, this was not a military error, quote unquote." I mean, yeah, like firing the missiles at Jerusalem, no, I don't think that that's an error. That's pretty clear. But as far as like trying to hit the holy sites, I don't know about that. I don't. I don't even know, like, the one that hit the Sultan's pool, like maybe that was headed somewhere else, and Maybe it was partially intercepted or something, and it kind of strayed. That's always a possibility too. We just got to be careful when it comes to drawing conclusions. But this person says this was not a military error. This was an intentional strike at the most sensitive 35 acres on Earth. Had that warhead deviated by just a few degrees, or had the hand of the Almighty not guided it into the open amphitheater of the Hinnom Valley, it would have struck the Temple Mount. Do you know that for sure? Like, do you know what the trajectory was? Has that been provided by the military? Or are we just guessing? Continuing. Consider the timing. We are in the month of Ramadan. At the moment of that strike, the Temple Mount was filled with thousands of Muslim worshippers in prayer. The Iranian regime, a regime that claims to speak in the name of Islam, was willing to slaughter thousands of its own co-religionists and destroy the al-Aqsa compound just to strike a blow at the Zionist entity. I believe this near catastrophe marks the beginning of the end for the regime in Tehran. By attempting to bomb the Temple Mount, they have lost the last shred of their Islamic legitimacy. Even our neighbors, the Saudis, the Emiratis, and the Jordanians now see the truth. You cannot claim to be the vanguard of faith while trying to blow up its foundation. I guess he's referencing how, Iran was trying to be like the leader in the Middle East when it came to Islam. If I remember right, there was kind of like a rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran. I don't know that you would call Jerusalem the foundation of Islam. The foundation would be like Mecca and Medina. But so I feel like that statement's a little bit wrong. Also, in regards to hitting that site when there were thousands of Muslims there, I'm not sure if that's even right, because this said that it happened the Saturday. It was Saturday, the first day of the war. And I may just need to learn more about Ramadan, but judging by this article, it seems like the main event happens on Friday. Now, I don't know, maybe there's prayers, like even more prayers there during the entire month of Ramadan, like every single day. It's just that that's not the way that this article sounds. This is the Times of Israel. Oh, where'd my highlights go? Might have to refresh it. You know what? Just whatever. It made it seem as, oh wait, here we go. Since the start of the US-Israel war against Iran on Saturday, Israeli authorities have, for security reasons, barred access to the old city for anyone other than residents or shop owners with an Iranian warhead impacting just several meters from the Temple Mount on the first day of fighting. Quote, the Muslim worshippers who associate Ramadan with praying at al-Aqsa Mosque are very heartbroken by this closure. Mustafa Abu Sway, deputy head of the Islamic Waqf that manages the holy site, said. Sorry, I feel like I had a better point to make with this article. But anyway, it highlights Friday Ramadan prayers in the attack, the initial fighting, the first missiles that happened on Saturday, the day afterwards. So I don't know. Since that time, at least according to this, this is Muslim account on X. They say Israel cancels Friday Juma prayers for Muslim worshippers at Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. And then here's another one that says, let's see, this one is from today. I'm recording this on the 6th. For the 6th consecutive day, Israeli occupation authorities keep Al-Aqsa Mosque closed to worshippers, claiming a state of emergency. So I just wanted to give you an update with what's going on there. I mean, it makes sense to me. I don't think that Israel is doing it maliciously. I think there is very real concern about a missile striking that area, especially if they start using more of the cluster munitions. But anyway, yeah, my assessment is I don't think those that are in charge in Iran would have cared necessarily if something had hit the Temple Mount. I don't think it was a top priority. I don't think that was like the one thing that they're trying to accomplish, but I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think that they were specifically trying to hit the Temple Mount? And if so, why? And if you think that they were, then why haven't they made more of an effort to do it? Why does the map look like this, where Tel Aviv is in the deep red, instead of it being reversed, where Jerusalem is in the deep red? I'd like to know your thoughts on that. So I think it's possible. Sorry, I'm just like repeating myself. I feel like it's possible that they wouldn't have minded if it had happened. Maybe, again, maybe they would have viewed it as a kind of a punishment to other Muslim countries or something. Maybe it's part of like, my object lesson of like flipping the board, like when you're playing against your friends, you're playing Risk, they're ganging up against you, you're sick of it, and you just flip the board because you're so upset. Maybe that could be part of it, where it's just like, you know what, we're just gonna, who cares? Like, who cares? It's all, this game is over, let's just flip the board. So maybe it was that too. I have no idea. But anyway, that's all that I have for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.